Hello and welcome to another episode of Let Me Talk to My Customer. Rich, you're unfrozen. You are de-thawed. How,
Exactly.
how are you feeling this week?
I'm feeling much warmer. Thank you very much. If our audience noticed, we missed a week, and the reason was that Texas had a little bit of bad weather,
Just a touch,
just a little bit of bad weather.
smidge.
So we were
Some
unable.
might even say historically bad weather.
It was pretty bad. It was crazy for a little while. We're getting back to normal though. I
Yeah.
did hear a lot of the yards that I work with this week were getting on me for their remans that were coming out of Texas being delayed. I was like, I don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, now the rest of the world, especially the United States, can sense just how important Texas is by all those delays and inconveniences you guys felt over this last week. My coffee was delayed coming out of Austin.
Oh,
Just awful. Those major things that really matter in this whole deal,
right.
the remans, the coffee beans,
Exactly.
etc.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we were so disappointed to learn that the powers of Lord Musk, um, our new tech over. I mean, wasn't enough. The Gigafactory wasn't enough to
Wasn't
sustain
enough.
us yet, but I think we have confidence now that we're landing on Mars and all these other things. That this won't last long. Don't don't think that this will last long. And again, we wish farewell to Lord Bezos as he jettisons from Amazon and Musk as at the reins. So, this is the time. Get in on your Bitcoin, your Dogecoin.
Exactly.
Diversify your currency. All,
Yeah.
all of those great
Get some
things.
of that GME and AMC stock, right?
Yeah, pump those stocks. It always goes up, and it's always to the moon or to Mars. There's no
Exactly.
downside to any of those.
Exactly.
Anyways, we thank you for indulging us in this foolishness, but we are grateful that I think most in Texas were able to come out of it all right, and hopefully have family or people around them, and seeing generosity from all across the country and people sending support and water and supplies and yeah, so that's been great to see. We are happy to be back. It is always a chaotic week when you're in and out of power, you're in and out of the internet. Um, it's hard to conduct business in a modern world during a pandemic without internet. And so we're very grateful to have all those things back. I'm grateful to have Rich back in the fold this week. And so it's been a good week getting back to normal.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us again and humoring us with that intro. We're grateful for you guys listening with us. We have a good episode this week, and hopefully we're back rolling and out of winter. And we expect to have some good things for you guys in terms of new salesperson training. We're going to have closing series trainings. And we have some spots opening up for either sales management or sales training services. So as you're coming out of these first 2 months, and granted, February's been a little bit of an odd month, and depending on where you're at regionally, January was a great month. Last week or so of February of January seemed to idle a little bit. And then there were some fits and starts this month too, in terms of just demand didn't seem to be quite as constant this month. But as always, as salespersons, as sales teams, as sales-driven industry, we get while the getting's good. And our job is to maximize our opportunities and maximize what comes before us. We don't always control the rate or the speed at which things come our way, but that's honestly not necessarily our concern. And if things get slow, we know what we can do there. Today, we're going to be talking about a concept that we're calling pulling the thread. And I think this fits in all customer relationships. I think this fits outside of sales, but specifically in sales, I think this is a concept that can be very helpful in either identifying a potential barrier, identifying potential opportunities, but fast tracking sales or potentially avoiding some long-winded, unnecessary scenarios. Okay. So when I say pulling the thread, what I'm talking about is any bit of information that comes our way during a sales transaction. And again, if you're not sales oriented, you could think outside of that. Any bit of information that's let's say, unusual or uncommon to the current scenario or current conversation. And this could be your customer calling from a unique location. Could be your customer calling and looking for a unique component or a unique part. This could be a unique situation between who they're looking to help out, or anything like that.
Okay,
Typically,
hold on. So yeah. to understand, you're pulling the thread on something that's unusual that comes out in the conversation in order to be able to unravel that scenario, as it were.
Yes, exactly. So, just like that little loose thread on your sweater that makes you itch and just annoys you, or on your sock or whatever, and it's small. It's not a large part of what we deal with, but when it happens, it's important, and there's usually something there, and something meaningful and significant. And so talking with sales reps, we're listening to their calls and going through their interactions, Rich, on a weekly, monthly basis. We tend to get in a rhythm, and we have a system. Our calls tend to always sound the same. We ask these questions and we have this flow. And what this is about is sensing when we need to deviate, right? Or sensing when something different is happening here. And part of the reason why pulling this is important is, to me, this is a measure of how well the salesperson is listening. And I think there's a number of cases where a customer offers up some bit of information that's either unique or unusual or uncommon, and we just fly right past it. We just keep on going, or we don't dig in enough to really make any use of that information that they're offering. So that's one particular aspect. Could you expound on that, on what happens when we get kind of tunnel vision, and where you see customer or sales reps potentially missing opportunities?
Sure. I mean, we can take an example where maybe somebody calls up and they're looking for 2 doors on the same side of a vehicle. Well, if we just price them those 2 doors and move on, we could have missed an opportunity.
Right.
There's something there that, like, if the salesperson's engaged, they should be thinking 2 doors on the same side, like there's other stuff involved there, right?
Right. There's more components in between there, right? There's more parts to this repair. What are the odds that it was just the 2 doors that were hit, and somehow the post and pillar was left alone, right? Absolutely. So a little bit of curiosity there goes a long way. And in that particular case, that thread could lead to an expanded invoice or expanded opportunity, getting more information about what happened on that accident and what they're looking to repair, right? Another potential thread that we see very often, this is probably the most common and across all countries or locations, is somebody that's calling you from multiple states away. Okay. And it could be this could be retail, this could be wholesale. Sometimes there's a lot to this, right? So let's say you're a yard or a business in the middle of your country, and somebody's calling you from the coast. Okay. And you haven't heard of this company, you haven't heard of it. It's an unusual address. Sometimes you're pulling on the spread to smell out fraud, right? And you're trying to identify the fact that, okay, this sounds fishy. This address is a house. This address doesn't compute, right? Where are we delivering this to? And so you're trying to smell that out to avoid a potentially bad situation. Other components to that, let's say somebody's calling you from 2 states away, and it's on a part that you have in stock, and this is a legitimate wholesale customer. It's a dealership, it's a garage, it's something like that. What does that tell you? What does that mean? Like, do you think a wholesale shop just calls around the country multiple states away? Do you think they just somehow accidentally stumbled on you? No. If you're aware and alert in that conversation, whoa, you're calling me from South Carolina. How'd you find me? Oh, well, I saw that you had this online. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. So in a case like that, pulling on just that little bit of uniqueness gets us to, they've already seen we had the part. Okay, what price did you see it for? Okay, and just so you know, that's without shipping. Let's see, it would be X to you. Is that still going to work for you? Right? We can move straight into a position where we're just completing the order. Okay,
Yeah.
we're not. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, pulling on that string also should provide the salesperson with a higher degree of confidence. I mean, if they're calling you from 3 states away, that more likely than not means they haven't been able to find it anywhere else.
Yeah, they haven't found it somewhere else. You guys are way cheaper than anybody who has it locally. There's something to that. And it's an important piece of information. I mean, nobody goes out of their way to order something from multiple states away if they have a comparable replacement locally, right? I mean, that's not common.
Right.
Now, it could be, in some other cases, maybe they're asking for a unique part. They're looking to do a swap over. They are ordering on behalf of somebody else. There could be a number of other things that come up as a particular loose thread, right? Some sort of irritant. Now, while not all of these will lead you directly to fast tracking a sale, they will identify potential hurdles, right? So in some of these other cases where there's some oddities, or think about it this way, Rich, what are some of those kind of nagging or unusual hurdles or objections we tend to get at the end of calls that we don't typically unravel early enough to do anything about?
I mean, the one that you mentioned that I hear all the time, it's not necessarily, it comes in a lot of different forms. It could be, oh, this is for my girlfriend's car, or I'm calling for my mother-in-law. This isn't my Cadillac. This is my mother's Cadillac.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that also in previous episodes. It's like a lot of times salespeople just be like, oh, okay. And then for them, that's just like not even a sales.
We throw up our hands. Oh, okay, I can't do anything. It's over. It's done with. It's
exactly.
Dead.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thread to pull in. I was like, oh, well, how'd it come to be that you were the one ending up calling around for parts? Oh, well, I'm kind of the family mechanic. I know these. Oh, so you're the expert. You're the family expert. Okay, great. Well, in your opinion, what are we looking to do on this car? Are they, either way, even if that's a little bit of an oddity, that person has an important role to play here. And so don't dismiss the fact that if you sell this critical person, this person that was important enough to be nominated to take care of somebody else, okay? So they've already been given authority, whether they feel comfortable making the purchase. Obviously, most of them probably won't. But at the same time, if you convince that person, you've got the sale. They're going to go with what this person recommends and where they're at. And so use that person's expertise, use their stature, use their position. But if you don't dig in on that, you can't use it. You get to the end of the call and it's like, okay, game over, and we stop.
You see that thread hanging there, but you just ignore it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, this is an important concept just because I think a lot of salespeople struggle with the mundane aspects of this job in particular. Now, it's fast paced, and that's very helpful. But in a certain way, I think how well you deal with these loose threads indicates how engaged you are, right? How well you connect with your customer. And if nothing else, you figuring out what's unique about this situation, what's underpinning, that lets you pivot or position yourself strategically as a salesperson to make the most of that interaction. Mm-hmm. And that can be the most in a number of ways. That can be making the most of, okay, I know this is fraud. I'm going to cut this call short. I have no interest in continuing this. Mm-hmm. Or I know who the decision maker is now, and I'm going to try and build rapport and relationship with this person because they're going to be my conduit to the sale. There's any number of ways here that I think if salespeople just run through their normal routine, they don't build trust, they don't build buy-in, they don't seize any potential opportunity. And that overall, whether you end up pulling and getting any information from that thread or not, I have a hard time believing if you're not engaged and actively listening and having a conversation with your customer, whether they're wholesale, retail, or whoever, what's the likelihood that you as a salesperson are actually impacting that sale for good, right? Like, Rich, we talk about this all the time. Your job as a salesperson, let's say this is a 20% chance to close this. You don't necessarily dictate the situation that you get on that call. But as a salesperson, your job is to move that percentage needle in your favor. How can you do that if you're not actively listening and engaging your customer?
It's hard. It's hard.
Right, because you're not using any of the tools or information that's available to you.
No, and I think that's what I think that's in fact what could potentially make it mundane.
Yeah. You're just banging phones. Sometimes it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad, but your impact as a salesperson doesn't really have as much to do with it as much as, some days you're going to have a good run of calls, of opportunities, and other days you're not. Over the lifetime of a salesperson, I'm looking for those who can continually increase and improve their chances. And not only for a single moment, but I think that awareness and alertness is what's going to allow you to build a customer base, right? Because you're more responsive, you're more engaged. They like talking with you because you're not mundane. I talk to how many different people that order parts a day, and hey, I actually have a conversation with you about our sports team or your family or your hobbies or whatever that is, right? There's some sense of camaraderie there.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say now, branching out a little bit of sales, I think this has primarily most to do with sales, but in terms of working with people, Rich, I would say this is something that we pick up. When there's a thread, sometimes there's a loose thread when we're trying to train somebody. It's like, okay, they keep getting hung up on this, or there's something there. A lot of times, even for us, that's our clue. Okay, I've got to figure out a way to dig deeper there. Now we have more interactions with them, and I might not pull at it that first time, but that's something Rich and I might talk about offline and say, okay, seems like there's some sort of impediment here. How do we want to go about trying to figure out why this person has this bias or this anchor or this mental block about getting to this sort of thing?
Another way you can think about it is just fostering curiosity.
Yeah.
Like if you can foster curiosity in yourself around whatever that loose thread might be, I mean, that is essentially unraveling it, right?
Yeah, we want to impact both sales and people. And I mean, if you're going to impact people, you have to have some sort of connection with them, right? And I think this is potentially those rough edges. We all have them. We all have those things that, for whatever reason, are a little bit different about us, or something's on our mind. And a big part of our job is, okay, even if that's something that's not block or an emotional block for someone to doing their job, if we can help them unpack that, then let's go ahead and figure out how to do that, right? Okay. Right. So I just want to touch on that. That's not our conversation today, but I do think as a manager, as an owner, these are things that are important to the people around us. And sometimes these threads are positive, sometimes these threads are negative. But if they help us to connect better and engage better, both in a sales context, that's probably equally true in a management and a training, coaching context as well, too.
For sure.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. That was our episode on pulling the thread. Please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. You can like our episode. We always appreciate that feedback. If you would, also be sure to find us on Facebook, countsbusinessconsulting.com. Rich and I are on LinkedIn as well. Richard Tyler, Chad Counts. We would love to hear from you. If there's any way that we can help you, support you, either as managers, as owners, as salespersons, sales managers, however you find yourself in this industry and even in other industries as well, if this is helpful for your team, we would love to partner with you and help you guys improve your performance. So thanks for joining us today. We hope you guys are doing well